Rupper, you mentioned Hockey Night in Canada. It's time, ladies and gentlemen. My favorite guest so far, and we haven't even talked to him yet. Huge fan
You
of
don't
this
even
guy.
know what he's going to say. What if he
Doesn't
comes
matter.
out here? If he
Doesn't
comes out
matter.
here and says stupid shit, are you going to still stand by that?
Yes, absolutely. He's
He
got
won't
the
say
best
stupid
column
shit.
on the internet.
He does.
32 Thoughts. His podcast is incredible.
Awesome.
He's on the radio nonstop. He's on the radio more than you. Every time I get in the car and turn on NHL Network, he's popping up, and he's got everything you need to know. The insider to all the insiders. Ladies and gentlemen, Elliotte Friedman. Elliotte, thank you so much for joining us, man.
Hey guys, you know what? I gotta say, first of all, I got a lot to live up to. I better be good now, and I aim to do it. But one of the things I forgot is I usually this is a do your job Patriot shirt, and usually I don't wear it when I do video because the Patriots either you really like them or you really hate them. And I know Rupper, you're a big Browns guy, so usually I change it. So what about the other two guys? Is this going to be a problem here that I'm wearing a do your job Patriot shirt, or am I okay?
You got a tough crowd here, Elliotte, because the guy over there with the beard, Gumps, he's a Dolphins fan, and you guys have kicked the shit out of him for years. And I'm a Steelers fan.
I'm too beaten down to care, Elliotte. Let it eat.
I'm a Steelers fan. You've done the same to us in the big moments too. So gloat while you
Sorry,
can.
guys. I change it because if I do a thing in Buffalo, I don't wear it because I don't want those Bills fans to kill me. So I should have been smarter.
Have you watched Men in the Arena?
Not yet. Honestly, Mike, during NHL season, even though it's been shut down a bit lately, I find it hard. Like I have to watch during the year. I have to watch Yellowstone. So I make it a point that I have to watch Yellowstone, and I have to watch Succession. And so I make it a point to watch Succession. But other than that, during NHL season, I don't get a chance to watch much other television. Like I'm way behind on Curb Your Enthusiasm. Yeah. I want to catch up to all this stuff, but I do want to watch Brady because I think, I used to think that Joe Montana was the greatest ever. Brady's the greatest ever. And everything that guy does and everything he does, I want to see it.
I think that's a good point. And Nick, and I ain't trying to put words in your mouth. And it's probably as hard as it is for you to say this, it is for me too. I want to hate Tom Brady. He is the best ever. I don't think anybody can really argue that. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, you're talking what he's done here. And what I find by this is I can't stand the Patriots, but I've watched this now, and I watched episode 7 yesterday. And I was like, I like this guy now. Like it pisses me off. Like I like him. And that last episode was talking about the Super Bowl in 2016, the comeback, and against Atlanta. And I was like teary-eyed. I had goosebumps. I'm like, I love this guy. So they do a great job with it. So check it out whenever you get a chance. But you don't get a chance because of all this stuff that happens like today, right? It just fills your whole time. What happened today, Elliotte? Like what the World Juniors, man. We were just talking about Guppies from Vancouver.
Yeah,
we've been talking on this podcast how important the World Juniors is to the fabric of Canadian upbringing. It's not happening now. Where are we at with it?
No, it really stinks. And as you guys probably know, there's a bit of I work at Sportsnet. The other guys at TSN. There's a rivalry there. We're friends, but we're competitors, right? And they like to be better than us, and we like to be better than them. And there's this is their big event, and it's just bad. I really feel badly for those guys. This is what they pour their hearts into every year. This is their signature event. The kids, obviously the players, the coaches, the volunteers. People who had tickets for the games. It's just terrible. And unfortunately, guys, what happened was, the world has changed so quickly. It has changed absolutely quickly. 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, when people started showing up in Alberta for this event, we weren't anywhere close to where we are now. And unfortunately, what happened was they saw positive tests and they knew it was going to explode. And because of the rules they had, they knew it was only a matter of time. Okay, right now we're at 1 positive test or 2 positive tests for the U.S., one for Czechia, one for Russia. But we all know that it starts at 1, and who knows where it was going to be by the time we were in the medal round. They just, like, you guys look at the NFL right now. Why were they the first league to change their protocols and basically say you can come back in as fast as you can? Because they're going into the playoffs.
Yep.
Like, they don't have the runway that the NBA has and the NHL has. And that's what happened here with the World Juniors. They had no runway. And, it's really sad and it's really unfortunate. But, the other thing that, it'll be interesting to see is there wasn't really a bubble. Like, they were in a hotel and I guess there was a wedding in one of these hotels and they were mixing in with people.
What are we doing?
Yeah. You know what, Mike? I've read that there was a wedding, that there is going to be a wedding. I don't know. I haven't, as we do this right now, I haven't determined the exact truth of when the wedding was, but there was definitely a mix of guests. Like, people, like, it wasn't a pure bubble.
Yeah.
And that was the problem.
How does that happen? Like,
it's Edmonton.
You have kids, like they're young men, but they're still kids. There's temptation all around. Whatever. Like, you see a couple bridesmaids, you're gonna want to go party with them. You're gonna say what's up. Like, I don't understand it. But it's
I gotta tell you, I don't even know if it's necessarily that. It's just that, like, last year I did games 3 to 5 of the Stanley Cup final, and I remember we did when I went to Tampa for Game 5, we stayed at a hotel and there was an Elks convention there. I don't know if anybody knows what the Elks are, but it's they're older people and there was a convention there, and in Canada they could booze, and in Canada you're going up in an elevator 2 at a time. When we were in Tampa, I'd get in the elevator and there'd be 20 Elks that would get on the elevator with me. And I'd be the only one wearing a mask. And they'd be looking at me and they go, "Are you unvaccinated?" And I said, No, I'm vaccinated. Well, they go, "Well, in Florida, if you're vaccinated, you don't wear a mask." And, it was just, and I'm sure that happened in Edmonton and Red Deer. You're just getting on the elevator with people, or people have been in the elevator who have been partying and mixing. And even if you're following the protocols, you can't avoid it.
I guess this is the thing that maybe you can give more info on, because you know how it is, and you just spoke on it. I mean, you're all things NHL, but all things hockey in general. I find that I'm more focused on, like, for draft. I'm never working the draft. I haven't up to this point, because it's too much, to be honest. Like, I'm not going to go on there and talk about something I don't really know about, and that's why there's so many great guys out there that do that, right? And so when I'm sitting here and I hear this, the first thing, when I heard that Team USA had that game forfeited, I'm like, that's a thing? That's a thing. And I was thinking to myself, so now we've seen that happen to them, Czechia,
Russia.
Russia, this tournament's canceled. I'm like, was this a knowing thing going into this? If you have one positive case, you're forfeiting a game. If that was known, Elliotte, in all due respect, why the hell did they even start this tournament?
Mike, I'll tell you, the reason was this. It was known, the protocols were known, the rules were known. But just remember, like, Mike, the second day of the Board of Governors meeting was December 10th, which was, 3 weeks ago.
Lots has changed.
Friday.
Lots have changed since then.
Think how much has changed in 19 days.
Good point.
We had no idea Omicron was going to be like this 3 weeks ago. No clue.
Bitch.
And that's the thing that bit them, is all of a sudden this new variant comes, and it's nobody can stop it. Like, like, one of the things, like, I have some friends who are doctors, and they're saying, we might get the immunity here because everyone might get it.
Yeah.
And
Elliotte, you got to be careful. It's not enough anymore just saying you're friends with doctors. People are going to want to know where they went to school, what their degree is, what they studied, what they treated. It's crazy out there right now.
Well, if they're my friends, they're the dumbest people alive. So, I'm not going to say.
Today looks like we're friends now, Elliotte.
But that's the thing, guys. Like, 3 weeks ago, like, I find it, like, I thought it was a real shame. I think it's a sad day, especially for the people competing in it. But, when you really sit back and you look at it, we had no idea what was coming for us here. No idea. And it's just sad, but that's the way. I just wish that I don't know. I just hope they find a way. I know they're going to talk about maybe playing this in June or something like that. I hope they find a way to do it.
So that's the main thing that just happened today, and then we're starting to hear, and a lot of things we're talking about, I'm sure you've spoken a lot about too, is we had Brad Marchand kind of coming out with his tweet, and I have my opinion on it. I'd love to hear what maybe you're hearing out there and your opinion on it, as far as kind of where the players are actually at on this, as far as I don't know, and I don't want to influence. I mean, you have your own opinion. I'll follow you up, but I just don't feel like this was ever felt very secure. And it's hard to get feeling secure for what the world we live in right now. You just don't know. Things are changing all the time. Is there a lot of Olympians or Olympian hopefuls that feel the same way as Brad Marchand there?
Yes, I think there are. It's like life, guys. It's like, you were joking about, about like, I better know where my friends came from and what medical schools and stuff like that. It's like the opinions are all over the map, right? And, for example, I think there were some players publicly, like Steven Stamkos was one guy who basically came out and said, I'm going no matter what. Like, I missed my chance last time. I'm going no matter what. There were some guys who told me privately, I'm not going to say anything, but I'm not going to go. I just, it's not fair to my family that I could get caught there for 5 weeks. But I think there were a lot of players that did want to go and really badly wanted to go. And Mike, where I think the problem was, and this is, I don't know if it's the players' fault or the messaging was screwed up. I don't have a good picture on that yet. Is that, again, 3 weeks before it happened, I asked the question of both the league and the Players Association. What happens if we get into a situation where, for argument's sake, the Canadians and the Swedes say, we don't really want to go, but the Russians and the Americans say, we want to go? Could you have a situation where it's an NHL Russia team and an NHL US team against half a Canadian NHL team, or
that'd be pretty cool. That'd be pretty cool for us Americans.
Or a team, a team that was all guys playing in Europe or the American Hockey League. Yeah. And I was told, yes, that could happen. If the decision was left up to the players and they made the individual choices, we could see that. And I think the players, like Brad Marchand, thought that that was going to be their option. However, what they didn't understand, and again, I don't know if it's the individual players' fault or the message wasn't communicated to them, the league had it where if enough games got postponed that they had to back out of the Olympics, it was not up to the individual players. If the league pulled the plug because too many games were canceled or postponed, they could say, none of you can go, we have to reschedule. And that's what happened. And I don't think, guys, enough of the players realize that. I will say this. I sympathize on one level with Brad Marchand. Last summer, I was supposed to work the Tokyo Olympics for the rights holder in Canada, CBC. My employer gave me permission to do it. And then when the NHL season went over, like the draft and free agency went over the start of the Olympics, they said, we need you for that. You can't go. You can't work the Olympics. And I thought that sucked. I love working the Olympics, but it's my number one employer that pays me. And I had to eat it. And I understand how Brad Marchand feels because I felt the same way. I just know that they got blocked. That's all.
Elliotte, I got to follow up on that.
Yeah.
And I may be mistaken here, but you would definitely know. Didn't it feel like when the league first rolled out the announcement, they almost made it seem like, hey, we talked to the players and the players are in agreement with us that we're not going to go? Was that just miscommunicated, or am I just interpreting their message wrong?
This is how it happened. On the Sunday, when it was announced that they were going to pause the season from the 22nd to the 25th, the league informed the Players Association that allowed them to terminate the deal, the Olympic deal, because they had enough games played. enough games were being missed that they had to reschedule. Excuse me. It triggered their material disruption of the season, and they told the Players Association, "Look, we'll give you a day to answer here, but do you want to make this announcement together, or do you want to make it ourselves?" And the Players Association decided to do it with them. But one thing that did happen during that time was there were a number of players who asked their agents or called the PA and say, can I sue, or do I have any legal recourse to say, no, I want to go, and do I have any legal recourse? And they were told no. So that's the way it worked. The players were given the option of making the announcement with the league, and they chose to do it.
You know what? That kind of, I always get this. So, I don't know if you're working with BX and some of these other guys too. Anytime you say anything as a former player that's working now on TV, and you say anything pro, even marginally pro league, they're like, "Oh, you're a sellout. You're a sellout. You're only saying this because you're paid by league." So, in true transparency, I'm employed by MLB Network. Okay, so I'm not nothing I say you. So I'm just saying this jokingly, but like Elliotte, this is something that drives me nuts. Is you hear some of the stuff, and even the thing in the Brad Marchand, and I understand what he's saying there, and maybe where he's coming from, and I try to always put myself in the other people's shoes, and I get what he's saying, and it does make a little bit of sense what he's saying, but I think that if you want to point the finger and you want to talk to somebody, and I don't know if you've heard this too, but I've heard some rumblings maybe inside the players kind of association, as far as it was never written out to be a leveraged position for the players to go to the Olympics. So if there's someone to kind of go back and be like, "Hey, this isn't what we wanted," I think the Players Association has to have wear some of that. You know what I mean? Like, this was always, when we first heard about it, it was never, "Hey, this is all good. The Olympics are go." When we all read that, we're like, I mean, they can go. Like, that was you know what I mean? Like, there was nothing ever in that situation. So I guess my point is like, we're sitting here, and it frustrates me because you're sitting here as a former player. We know the $1 billion that are owed to the owners. It's going to be paid through escrow over the next number of years. And the fact that we don't see any of this money from the IOC, we never have, probably never will. Is there any talks of, we've heard of whispers of, let's go World Cup. How about the Players Association and the league dig in World Cup? Let's start banging back some of this money back in the tills, pay this thing back, and get a partnership there. Everybody wants to see best on best. I don't feel like it has to be the Olympics. I think you can build out a World Cup that can take, and you have control, what it looks like, what the advertising, like the league's rights holders. I mean, there's a lot of money to be made in that's not being made at the Olympics.
First of all, there's a lot to unpack there. First of all, I would say that I hear a lot of things about what I say, and not all of them are good. And especially from BX, he loves to tell me how stupid I am. Like everybody thinks we're all biased in some way, right? I have people who say that I love the Leafs too much. I have people who say I hate the Leafs, and you criticize them too much. I know the league at times have told me I'm way too pro player. I've had people who tell me I cover up for the league. So everybody kind of sees what they want to see. You have to do what you think is. All I do is I try to treat people well, and B, I try to be fair. And sometimes I'm good at it, and sometimes I'm not. But that's kind of the way I look at things. When it comes to this, Mike, the problem is that the players have made it very clear, and I get this. Like I just said about broadcasting the Olympics, there's something special about the Olympics. All those players, they want to be Olympians. Would the World Cup be a nice thing? Yeah, but it doesn't mean as much to them as the Olympics does. And the Olympics will always have that pull, even though you don't make money off them. Now, the World Cup. The one place I totally agree with you, Rupper, is that it's time for a World Cup. It's been 8 years now since the NHLers were at the Olympics. It's been almost 6 years since we had the World Cup, and there's a whole new generation of players. And I think that, like before, when it was World Cup and Olympics every 2 years, I think it was too much. I don't know if the fans like. There's this big debate about should we have the World Cup of soccer every 2 years. I think that's killing the golden goose. I really do. But right now, look, like I want to see Ovechkin at the height of his powers in a Russian jersey one more time.
Yeah.
I want to see Crosby at the height of his powers in a Canada jersey one more time.
With McDavid.
I want to see,
with McDavid.
Well, this is the thing. Here we go. I want to see Crosby's generation and McDavid's generation for Canada versus the U.S. Kane's generation and Matthews' generation.
Hell yeah.
It's time.
I love that.
And you don't think all of those guys don't want to kill each other? They so badly want to kill each other. And then there's going to be Ovechkin for Russia and Hedman for Sweden trying to ruin all of this North American yellow journalism, right? Like, like I see your guys' reactions. I think it's time. Especially because there's new blood. It's time to see Matthews versus McDavid on the international stage. And the last World Cup, I think, left a bit of a sour taste in everybody's mouth. It didn't work as well as everybody hoped. It didn't make what everybody hoped. But I think some of that was because it was too much. Yeah. This World Cup, to me, it's a guarantee. It's a guarantee.
So there's a lot of hype behind that. You think the players will rally around that?
I do. I think that, like, again, Mike, it's not the same as the Olympics. It'll never have the pull of the Olympics, but I do think, like,
but at this point, you haven't played in 2 Olympics, so you know.
When Crosby and McDavid make time in the summer to skate with each other to work on stuff, that says to me the players are invested.
Yeah,
they're invested.
Yeah. No, and you know what? Here's the thing. In Gumpy, Gumps is a big. Are you a soccer fan, Elliotte?
Oh yeah, not more at the international level as opposed to at the club level. But I do love my football, I guess.
So Gumps, you're the soccer fan, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm really not knowledgeable in it at all. But hasn't the World Cup in soccer is bigger than the Olympics in soccer? Is it not?
Yeah, but it's under 21s or under 23 at the Olympics.
Oh, okay.
And having the World Cup every 2 years, I never understood that, because the Euro, like, you have the World Cup and then the Euros are in between that. Like, I never understood that the push for that. You're still getting a major tournament every 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, no, it's a good point.
Conquers all.
That's the thing. That's the thing. We all want to see best on best, but we also need to make the players whole, the owners whole. And so maybe if this is another vehicle in doing that, I don't know if that would that be something to be figured into that? Is that something,
Michael, it's so funny you said it, because I had someone call me today and say, if I was a player, I'd play in one, and I'd find a way to say, all right, the vast majority of the profits go to the owners. You say, this is our makeup, and let's get the cap going so we can make more money.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense, right?
See, the 4 of us, we just solved all the problems.
We could solve
that easy.
We did it.
Yeah.
Just drop the puck.
Elliotte, I got one more thing about international play and the Olympics and all that. And Brad Marchand said it, if the players were open to a situation where basically a loan situation where say, hey, void our checks, let us go, we'll play for free while we're over there, you don't have to pay us. Is that something the league would listen to and be receptive to, or they don't care, it's more about the injury risk and they just want to be made whole?
Well, here's here's the thing. I'm looking at the Eastern Conference standings right now, okay, as we do this show. The Boston Bruins have 30 points in 26 games. They have games in hand on everybody else in their division, except for they have games in hand on everyone else in their division. But basically, they're 10 points out of a playoff spot in their division. And I just have to. I have to check and see where they are in the wild card. They're in the wild card race.
Sure,
they're like right there.
Yeah, they're right.
So
there.
let me ask you something. Like, the Boston Bruins are paying Brad Marchand just under $7 million a year, and he's like, I will say this: that guy is worth every penny. He is
he's
worth
underpaid
every
for sure.
penny.
He's underpaid.
Yeah, he's worth every. I'll even take that. He's underpaid because he's a great player who's going to the Hall of Fame someday. But if you're the Boston Bruins and you're in a playoff race, are you saying to Brad Marchand, you know what? Okay, if you need to take 3 weeks off, you can go to the Olympics and we won't pay you. No. And the other thing too is, and I was kind of joking about this with a couple guys who were laughing about it around the league, is they'd love to hear the phone call between Brad Marchand and Jeremy Jacobs on this one. Like, how would that go?
You could even say it from the standpoint, and this is the part where your mind starts wandering when you're reading the Brad Marchand thing. And I want to say this, and I think we just said it right there. He's very, in my opinion, underpaid. He's an awesome player, man. This guy brings it all the time. So, but with his comments, he said, I started like, oh, can you imagine if they did that? If they had a taxi squad that would fulfill these players going to the Olympics, what would that look like? And I'm sitting there thinking inside the locker room, and I'll tell you, if I'm in that locker room as a player and our captain and our assistant captain have gone respectively to their countries for the Olympics and we're in a playoff race, I'm not very happy. I'm not happy.
Yes.
And I think that would open up a whole new can of worms. Maybe some teams would be okay with it. And I actually want to say this. I ain't trying to put any words in anybody's mouths, especially for the Canadians, because we see Canadian proper representation in Canada as far as the World Championships every year. Like, that's something that's lacked in the U.S., the pride to go play in those tournaments. I'm not convinced that every single Canadian would go and do that. Like, I'm not going to say who, but a pretty substantial one I played for in the state of Pennsylvania. I don't know if he would go. I think that's how much onus he puts on what his team is doing in the National Hockey League. And that would create a huge ripple effect in the country of Canada.
We know you're talking about Brian Dumoulin. We know
Brian Dumoulin, exactly.
Absolute stud.
I'll tell you the same thing, Mike. Again, with me in the Olympics in 2018, when the Olympics were in South Korea, I was offered the opportunity to leave Hockey Night and go work the Olympics for CBC, and Sportsnet gave me their blessing. They said, if you want to go work the Olympics, you can. It was during the season, and the NHL wasn't taking a break. And at the end of the day, I said no. I didn't think it was right to leave my teammates. Like, I'm hired to work at Hockey Night. I'm not, like I said, I'm not a perfect person by any stretch of the imagination, but I do try to be a good teammate. And I just thought that was the wrong thing to do.
No, it's a great point. I just find that would have been, and it's hypothetical, so there's no real need to talk about it. But I thought, oh my gosh, like, I can't even imagine what some of the locker rooms would be going through in something like that. But hey, we appreciate you going over all that stuff. Now let's the thing that we really love talking about is the games, right?
Okay.
And what we saw last night, we saw goals galore. We see I think at this point of the season, we try to say, like, who's real, who's not real.
Okay. Let me look at the standings.
Yeah, there's a lot of wondering what's going on here. What do you think, as far as, it might be a little early for this, but the team, what is there a team out there? Because there's some teams that are overachieving. There's some teams certainly that are underachieving. What do you think a team like the New York Islanders? I don't see them getting back into the mix. I
don't.
I was in Columbus. So is it similar to the evaluation of Montreal last year? They had a good chunk of last year was not good. Then they got good at the right time. And then we see what they are now. What does Lou and that organization, how do they truly evaluate this team right now? Is it a write-off and you kind of move forward, or do you start trying to take this thing apart?
It's a great question because, Lamoriello once told me that one of his rules was you only go for it when you really think you can win, right? So I'm not expecting him to make any short-term fixes. Michael, I remember in 2012 when they went to the Stanley Cup final, he picked up Marek Zidlitsky late in that year. And we talked about that deal, and he said, I'm only making this deal because I think this team is good enough to win. And they got to the Stanley Cup final. So I'm not expecting him to do too much here. I think this year, I look at it as a write-off for the Islanders. I think they got blasted by COVID. You know, they had that big road trip at the beginning of the year, even if they tried to make it as easy as possible on them. The only thing that scares me about the Islanders, guys, is that some of their key players are older. And at this point in their careers, I look at them losing a year and I say that's going to be tough. And are there young guys? I mean, obviously, but you're looking at, like, I think a guy like Wallstrom, a guy like Dobson, the second half of the season, those guys have to show they can play. If you're the Islanders, you have to know that those guys can play.
You got to give them the minutes to see it too.
You got to give them the minutes, because that's the one thing that scares me about that team is a lot of their key guys are a little bit older.
Elliotte, I got to keep it in the Metro here, and I got to ask you about the Pittsburgh Penguins. Massive fan, obviously. The situation after the early playoff exits, the conversation is, oh, they're older, they're done, it's time to tear it down, it's time to rebuild. And maybe that's true, but it feels like there's a little bit of fight left in some of the older guys, Carter, Crosby, and now Malkin is close. He's close to returning. He's skating with the team. He's practicing. And we're hearing things. He spoke today, actually, and someone asked him about a contract extension. I believe he said, hey, I'm rich. So it doesn't seem like he's looking.
When Malkin talks, it's worth the admission, man. It really is when Malkin decides to talk.
I'll jump, Nick. I want you to ask this question, but I got to tell you a quick Malkin story. He doesn't say much, and I think that's what you're saying there, Elliotte.
Yeah.
He doesn't say much, but when he speaks, there's some weight to it. And I remember playing in Pittsburgh, and he wouldn't say much. We were struggling. We come in the locker room, and we just hear, we don't hear him talk to me. He's actually kind of self-conscious, I think, about speaking. He does a great job. But inside the locker room, he's just like, fucking better, be better. He's just saying all these things, and he gets done. And, like, no one knows how to react. We don't really know what he said, but we're just like, yeah, let's go. Second period. It's like when Gino speaks, you listen. And he spoke today, and he's like, hey, I'm rich. I don't need, it's not about that. So, Nick, go ahead with your question about it.
Yeah, that's Rupper, like, you nailed it. Like, I'm trying to think, like, what is the makeup of this team going forward? Is it one last hurrah, or is it, okay, let's just play it? We know Hextall's MO is to kind of collect assets and help kind of retool and not a total tear down and rebuild, but kind of retool as they go here. Is this still a team that is looking to contend? Are they going to be probably making a move at the deadline? Are they looking for goalie insurance? I know Brian Burke very well. Like, what's kind of the makeup and the outlook for the Penguins moving forward the rest of the season here?
Well, I think first of all, I think one of the things is, as long as Crosby's there, I don't think they'll quote unquote rebuild. Like, I don't see it. I don't think A, he could handle it, and B, why would you waste any of his last few years, right? So I do think the key point you made there is Hextall. I think they want to do a better job of sort of reloading while they're still going for it. And the one thing about Hextall is he finds players at the draft, and that's what they want. I think the thing about Malkin and the thing about Letang is, can they find a sweet spot at the numbers? Like, Malkin's like, I'm rich, but it still doesn't mean he's going to play for the league minimum next year.
Right.
So, like the thing about players I've learned is, you can't get to be as good as those guys are without, you can be friendly and you can be pleasant, but you have an incredible belief about yourself and what you can do and what you're worth. Mm-hmm. So the key is, you can say to Malkin, look, you're not making 10 million next year. Yeah. We're just not doing that.
It's not there yet.
But you can't go in there and say you're going to make 2. Mm-hmm. So what's the sweet spot and what's the turn? And I think the other guy is, and Mike, you know this guy well. I've been told this about Letang. Chris Letang, I love dealing with him. Just an unbelievably ferocious competitor. And if you even suggest to him that, he's either on the decline or he's not worth the same kind of thing, he's going to lose his marbles. So, I think the thing is, I think it's the same thing. It's like, you have to delicately find a way to say, Chris, the contract you just got, we're not doing that again. but you have to find the sweet spot, and it's very delicate. Like, I think they both want to be Penguins. I think the Penguins want to keep both guys. I just think the whole thing is, can you find that sweet spot? And it's hard. It's really hard.
No, Elliotte, I got one. It's beautiful news. It's great to hear. I feel like the same way. I feel like they can probably work something out. I got one more little selfish Penguin thing I got to get off my chest now.
Sure, Nick, no problem.
The team obviously has sold the Fenway Sports Group. I don't think Pittsburgh's super happy about it because it's a Boston name.
Boston
coming in, but I think people were excited to know Lemieux was still going to be around. I was hoping maybe you could confirm that Lemieux is still going to be like pretty hands-on. And if you got any good Mario stories, I think we'd love to hear them.
I'm going to tell you one of the best Mario stories you've ever heard that makes me look like a total idiot. And you guys will love this story. And there's witnesses to this who saw it happen. So we're at the All-Star game. The year was in LA, and they named the 100 greatest players. Okay. So in LA, there's an elevator that goes down from, the press box level to the ice level. And I was on it with Nick Kypreos and Mario Lemieux and one of the partners in the Penguins, one of the minority owners. I can't remember who else was there, but I remember it was the four of us for sure. And so we get out of the elevator on the ice level, and we were going to the dressing rooms. And Mario did not have his credential with him. Oh. And in most places,
big guy,
this would not matter. But this was the person, the usher or the attendant or whatever you want to call him. He was there. And I don't have any problem with this because they're doing their jobs. They are told, especially on an all-star weekend, there's a lot of hangers on. Don't let people in who don't have passes. But he didn't know who Mario Lemieux was. So he let He let Nick in. And he let the I forget her name. She was a minority owner of the Penguins, and he let her in, but he wouldn't let Mario in. So, like, I think, okay, I'm going to solve this problem right here. And I said, sir, if I could just speak up on his behalf, this is like the second greatest player ever. And Mario turned and looked at me and goes, second behind who? And Kipper has a big belly laugh, and he just died. He could not. He like ran to tell everybody this story, like Uncle Elliotte just did to Mario Lemieux. Look, I think these people at Fenway, they're pretty smart. They know what Mario's worth. I think they know that your best players would be very comfortable if Mario was still around. I don't know if he'll be as invested as he was before, but I think they're smart enough to recognize that if you need him and you want him, you're going to find room for him.
Hey, Elliotte, I want to ask you before we let you go. You want to hear a Kipper story?
Sure.
Nick shared one with me, and it's unbelievable. You going to share it, Nick?
Yeah, we have to. So, Elliotte, we went to Toronto. We were doing some broadcasts and some interviews up there with our boss, Pat McAfee. He went up and interviewed Steve Nash and Marshawn Lynch and the company we were affiliated with at the time. It was a big promotional event and a big launch. And Pat went to his one of his meetings. And when he did that, he kind of lets us stooges run around the city and just kind of go enjoy the local nightlife and just, kind of get acquainted with the city, as you will. And Gumpy was there, and he's from Victoriaville, BC. He doesn't love Toronto, so he was reluctantly
that's a lie.
Trudging along the city, experiencing
all those BC guys hate us. It's okay. It's okay, Gumpy. I understand how it works. I've been around long enough.
And we went
East Coast.
We went to a lunch spot. It was outside. It was like a courtyard setup. I can't recall the specific name of the place, but it was a beautiful place. And we go in to eat, and Gumpy, being the Canadian that he is, the true heart Canadian is, he looks over and he goes, "Oh my God, that's Kipper. That's Nick Kypreos." And it was at the time that Kipper was looking for his next move. He was looking for his next big thing, his next gig. And he was meeting with some folks in some suits. So it looked like an important lunch meeting, as you will. And our boss, Pat, being the nice guy that he is, said, Oh, well, I mean, let's go make him look good. Let's pump his tires a little bit. So he goes over and he has no idea who Nick Kypreos is, none whatsoever. But he walks over and he says, "Oh, Kipper, the legend, how you doing, brother? Great to see you." And he's trying to build him up here in front of these supposed what we think are execs, right? Just to make him look good. And Nick stands up and he's super gracious, shakes Pat's hand, says, "Hey, thanks, whatever," and then goes about continuing to have his lunch. Well, after he finishes the lunch, he comes over and he sees all of us. There's a big group of us. We're standing at the bar. We got a couple drinks. He comes over and he goes, "Hey, boys, how you fucking doing? What, you boys want a fucking picture or what?" And we, yeah, absolutely, Kipper. Absolutely, we want a picture with you.
So you want a picture or what?
we all pile around and we get a picture and we have a night and a moment with Nick Kypreos that we never thought we'd get to experience in our lives. But
he's a good man.
What a guy.
Good man. Yeah. I think that's one of the things that we're lucky about. I think in hockey, there's a lot of really good people who try to treat people really well. So I'm not surprised at all that Nick would react that way. I'm not surprised at all.
No, he's awesome. He's awesome. And you know what, Elliotte, we appreciate you, man. On obviously a busy day for you and working the phones all day. Appreciate you coming.
Gumpy, you haven't asked any questions. You got before I go.
You
got any questions? First of all, I love the beard, Gumpy. Like that thing is outstanding.
Thank you.
I have to say.
I would ask you about the Dallas Stars. I'm a huge Stars fan, but I'm not going to be a homer. I'm not going to be a homer here. Florida Panthers are on a bit of a schneid. Do you think they can bounce back, or do you think? I feel like I don't know. It feels like they're in a bad spot right now.
I think you know what, Gumpy. I think the toughest thing about this year is everything is so screwed up right now. I worry about anyone jumping to conclusions. Like one of the teams I'm really curious to see here. I was talking about this with someone today, is Calgary, because there's a couple of teams that think that Calgary could be in great shape. And like I don't want people to like misunderstand what I'm saying here, but they just went through a really rough situation. It sounds like, knock on wood, most of their people are healthy, which is all we care about. But like they're going to have a situation where everybody went through it, right? And so now nobody has to test for 3 months, and hopefully everybody comes back and gets back to full health and they can play. And I think that's one of the things that's going to happen here is, like, Omicron is blowing through the world, never mind just the NHL. So I think all these teams here are going to be affected differently. You're going to have some guys out at once. You're going to have other guys out at another time. Who's going to be able to recover faster? Like Mike, you played. Like sometimes when you're out, you can skate at practice, but that's nothing like when you get in, when the puck drops for real. And so I just tell people right now, don't overthink it. I look at that roster. I think they're really good. I think they're really deep. I think Ekblad was having a Norris Trophy year before this all hurt. They might not be themselves until the middle of January, but I think they're going to be fine.
Yeah.
One more now that we open this can of worms, Elliotte. Canucks were on fire with Bruce Boudreau.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Does that carry, like they go tonight in Anaheim? Is that going to carry over? Or like that's the worst time ever for there to be a pause for that team. They were rolling.
Yeah, and you know what? They had 2 guys test positive this morning, right? And a staff member too. The people who were negative yesterday made the trip, and now they're positive today. So I always wonder what that does to a team, because I'm sure all those other players are looking around and saying, "Uh-oh." So that's worrisome. Look, I think this. I think that team was really tense. I'll tell you, like one of the toughest markets in the league to play in is Vancouver.
Yeah,
like they're like you're from Victoria, like.
Hey, it's
fair. Hey, there is fair weather as it gets, my friend. That you lose.
I'm glad you said that. They can scream at you on Twitter.
Hey, I'm Minnesota North Stars, Dallas Stars. I've been beating that Canucks drum my whole life, man. They went to the Stanley Cup. They were all, I mean, you lose a couple games in a row, they lose half their fan base. It's insane. And that's not a joke. I'm not joking. That is not a joke.
You know what? I just got to tell you, I fought enough with those fans. I don't need to fight with them anymore. But but you know what? I think, Gumps, you're right though. I just think that like to me, the toughest place to play in the league is Montreal. Like that to me is always going to be number one. But I think in the English markets, I think Vancouver is the toughest. And like when you're losing, it absolutely sucks out there. And I think that the one thing that Boudreau did is he lightened it up. They won a few games. They feel better. They might be in too big a hole to make the playoffs. I think they dealt themselves too big a hole. But put it this way, I think they're going to give it a little run at it.
No,
I always said that they overperformed in the bubble, and like that's not who that team was.
The expectations were really high from that, right?
Yeah, they way overperformed in the bubble, and that's not how good that team was, and the expectations were too high for a young team.
I don't disagree with you. They got to get Pettersson back going too. If your best player's not going, you don't have a chance.
I got a story for you real quick on Bieksa.
Okay.
So Bieksa, I remember, you know how it is a lot of times when you're in the playoffs and you're staying in the hotel, you're just watching the games that are playing. You know, you're staggered days, right? So I was watching all the Vancouver games. I was playing in Pittsburgh. Craig Adams and I were sitting there, and I didn't know, you know, Bieksa real well. We played against him a few times. I knew he was a hard-nosed defenseman, and I turned to Craig Adams and I go, Adsy, I'm like, what's up with this fucking Bieksa? And he's like, oh my gosh, every whistle coming in there, you know, there's a stoppage of play, goalie frees the puck, and all of a sudden Bieksa comes in, starts just moving bodies, staring everybody down. I'm like, this guy, and this is what I'm thinking. I'm like, this guy thinks he's the fucking sheriff. Like, so we start watching the game, and we're in there, we're like sitting there, and all of a sudden we start going, every time there's a whistle and we see Bieksa come in, we go, wah, wah, wah. We start doing that. So we play Bieksa the next year, and after the whistle, we see him go in, and from the bench, Adsy and I are making fun of him, like doing this thing. And then so the game proceeds and goes on. And after a play, I'm on the ice. Stoppage of play. Adsy, I think, had enough of it, and he shoves Bieksa. The next thing you know, the gloves go flying. Bieksa just bang hits Craig Adams. One punch. Day forward, we're never saying that again. We're like, we just always call him the sheriff, but like now it's like the sheriff. He is the sheriff. He's the sheriff.
He's a legit tough guy.
He's a legit tough guy. I had no idea.
He is not a phony.
He's
tough, not
man.
A phony. He's a legit tough guy.
And he does great. He does awesome. He's one of the best, I think, on TV. So there's that.
Agree.
And then also, hey, Elliotte, I don't even think I've said this to you before, but hey, boys, Elliotte was the guy who got me into doing some TV here. Put a call in NHL Network. So I appreciate you, Elliotte. You're amazing. Thank you for your time tonight. You're the best in the business and well respected by the players. And I think that's you know, good ups in your you know, in kind of your corner. So well done.
Thanks, Rupper.
Elliotte, just one more thing before you go, please. It's a simple question. And I try to ask it to a lot of people. I haven't asked it to our guests lately, but I like to. If you were commissioner for a day, what's the one change you would make to this league right now?
That I would expand the playoffs.
Okay.
And I'll tell you this is what I would do. I have a plan. So what it would be is the top three in each division would make the playoffs, and then there would be 7 versus 10 and 8 versus 9 in both conferences. And what you would do is you'd play it in 2 nights, and the higher seeded team would get home ice both games. That's the reward for finishing higher. You get home ice for both games. The first game is only 60 minutes. Okay. And the second, and so if because it's Rupper, Pittsburgh, and Nick, because you're a big Pittsburgh guy. So Pittsburgh wins game 1, gumps Dallas, even though this wouldn't be possible, but let's just go with it. Dallas has to win game 2 in regulation or they're out.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
Okay. Now, if the first game ends and vice versa, if Dallas wins game 1, Pittsburgh has to win game 2 or they're out. If it's a tie in game 1, and this is the one time where ties are allowed, then game 2, winner take all in 60 minutes. But if we have 2 ties or a split in the 2 games, sudden death overtime for who goes on.
I honestly love that. I really do.
That and you tell me
good.
that fans wouldn't go bananas for that
Oh,
setup?
100%. And you know what? The best thing about it too, it's not like in baseball you get to play and you get 2 games out of it.
Yeah.
You know,
You get
you
4.
2 games.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you get
Yeah.
That's right. Right, you're right. I see what you're saying. Yes.
Yeah. No,
But that's the
no, you
thing.
get 4 games.
Like, initially, it was total goals. I went with total goals, but one GM said to me, "Total goals is bad because if the first game is 8-0, you've basically ruined the
Yeah,
second
you're
one."
dead.
So just just go with 60 minutes first game, and the other team has to win game 2, or if there's if there's any tie, whether 2 ties or 2 teams split, sudden death overtime, and not 3-on-3 playoff overtime rules.
I like that.
Whatever it takes to get the Stars in the playoffs, I'm good with.
Yeah. So Nick, that's my one change.
I love it. And then last thing here, I promise before you go, hopefully you guys can see this. Is it popping up on the screen?
Yeah. Oh, is that the picture of Nick?
That's the picture with all the boys and Kipper there.
That's fantastic.
I love that he comes up to you guys. He goes, "So, like, you want a picture or fucking what?
You want a fucking picture?"
Legend.
That's good, man. Well,
don't tell Pat I wore the Patriots shirt, okay? Like I know I'm in big trouble.
He'll be okay. He's had enough dances with the devil and Belichick. He's got the respect and he gets it. Elliotte, can't thank you enough, man. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
I know you're a busy guy. You're all over TV. You're all over the radio. Oh no, my lights went out again.
Oh, this guy, he's fucking living in the fucking cellar again. Fucking Jigsaw, he's back.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Well,
my pleasure, guys. Nick, Gumps, Rupper. I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to do it.
Thank you, buddy. We'll talk later.
Thank you, Elliotte. You're a legend, brother.
All right, take care, guys.
See you, brother.
So,
in front of Elliotte Friedman, dude. My lights go out in front of Elliotte Friedman.
We did so good of looking professional until that shit happened, man. We were like, he was probably like, "Hey, I like this. It's a good spot. We'll come back." And then all of a sudden, he's like, "What the fuck's going on with these guys? We ain't coming back."
I clapped. Is your light on a clapper? You got a clapper over there?
Oh, thank you, Carly. My girlfriend turned the lights back on.